Hi, it's Joe Alch with Acappella Podcast. We've got awesome guests today. I am talking with the executive team at Appletree Court in Richardson, Texas, Hope Self, RN, Lisa Fletcher, RN, and also Jessica Hazelton, who is the executive director. One thing in Dallas and Fort Worth, there are a lot of communities that are coming up with residents that are COVID-19 positive. Appletree has a tremendous reputation in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and they have absolutely zero COVID cases, which is hats off to you guys. You're a great team. Hats off to you all on what you're doing. And I want to just talk about, from an administrative team's perspective, keeping COVID out of your communities. And job well done. I have to tell you this just right off the bat. So Appletree, of course, is one of the best assisted living communities in Dallas. We all know it. You all do a great job. So tell me, how are you all keeping your residents safe?
So safety is our number one priority. We have a lot of screening protocols that we have put in place. Before a resident comes into the community, or a staff comes into the community, or an essential visitor, we have a station set up at the front desk. So the process would be that they would come and ring the doorbell, and we can communicate with them inside through a camera. And then we have a pre-screen questionnaire. So what that would entail is it asks several questions, and then we will take their temperature before coming in. And then we also have packages. We have made some changes on packages and deliveries, and really put a control on what comes in and out of our building. Packages would be delivered at the front desk and screened. We have a table out front. Then before they get delivered or transported throughout the building, we'll spray it down with Lysol and deliver it directly to the apartment.
That's great. And I've heard about ways to keep that virus out. So when did you guys, I know you're ahead of the curve, when did you all start doing implementations to keep your facility COVID-free?
Well, thankfully, we have a really great task force and team that's been keeping us knowledgeable and giving us the tools on education, following a lot of what the CDC says, in addition to the state policy and procedures. So a lot of education on everybody's part to stay informed on what needs to be done in the community and what precautions we need to take. But we did start, we're following really a lot of what is with the county and the CDC and the health force task.
Yeah, it started when
And I would say that too, whenever we started hearing on the local news about different things happening, we immediately started implementing certain things, scrutinizing the people who start coming through our building. And as this whole thing has evolved and changed, we've tightened the ropes ever so tightly as things have changed. But when Judge Clay Jenkins came out with the order for the stay at home, at that point we really put a tight rein on everything as far as how we implemented visitors coming through, or not visitors, but essential personnel coming through our building, even our staff members and everyone coming through. That was probably the point that we started doing that. But also, the one key thing that we did was we planned ahead. As we started seeing this, we started planning ahead and started ordering our PPE way before other people started doing that. Because I was foreseeing, and Jessica was foreseeing that, hey, this is a possibility, a true possibility. So we started ordering our PPE long ahead of everybody else, which and we had a lot of supplies already here too. So that was another thing that we did.
So what are you doing as far as families visiting the community? Are they allowed to come visit their loved ones?
Not at this time. We're not allowing visitors into the community, but there are several ways that they can stay connected, and tools that we have set up here at the community to make sure that everybody's still be able to communicate with their loved ones.
Well, Yeah, I visited a community over the weekend. I was just checking temperatures, and there was a gentleman whose wife died last week in the community, and it's so sad. He was crying when I went into his room, and he's grieving his loved one. His family can't see him, and you just take so much for granted. um, you know these seniors are isolated anyway, and then just to add that that layer to that, losing someone. So have you had any situations where you've had a resident that just really needed to see a loved one and couldn't? And what do you do in that case? How can they make contact, speak to their loved ones? How are you handling that?
Well, I could address that one. I know we have a resident that's, she gets real tearful, and she does need family contact. So we set up a FaceTime with her, and she's got some dementia issues and doesn't really know how to do that. So we use our phones, and whenever we see that tearful face come on, we jump to that and let's have her talk to her son. And so we do that for many of our residents. We have a Skype account set up here in the conference room. We can do FaceTime, phone conversations, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
It's essential right now that we're still communicating with our families and making connected. Like she said, we have Skype, we have FaceTime, we have a Facebook. We're sending families, pictures throughout the day. So a lot of ways to stay connected. And
just letting the families know that they're doing okay. That I think that is just, because you worry, you can't see. Now, what about Medicare agencies like hospice? What if you have a patient that's on hospice? Are you allowing those nurses in? How is that being handled?
So for us, with hospice agencies, we're following the CDC guidelines, but what we have done to minimize our exposure is we're no longer allowing the home health or hospice aides to come in. Something that we can do, our caregivers can do, we're having them do to minimize that. Now, what CDC and the health department has said is that if we get down to crisis care and the life care, then of course we're going to let family in at that point. Now, fortunately, we haven't had that issue here. But should it arise, we would definitely let them come in, and we would have that 24-hour nursing as needed. But right at this moment, we don't need that. Like I said, we are streamlining agencies that come through, and then minimizing the aides for not having caregivers come through the building if they don't need to.
Yeah, and that's a good, we're so fortunate now with telemedicine. And, if there is a patient that needs a doctor visit, you can do that by Skype or, and that's a benefit. So even your nurses, hospice and home health could even do assessments just over telehealth. So I know some other communities are doing that as well. So I saw on the news that Matthew McConaughey was doing bingo at a community in Austin. And I thought that was so interesting to come up with a fun way to keep your residents happy and keep them, in community and social interaction. So what are you all doing at Appletree to allow residents to feel part of a community?
Yeah. Well, we're doing a number of things. Like, for example, we had an Easter celebration last week, and so we're allowed to have up to 10 residents at a time in one setting. So we spaced them apart, 2 at a table, 6 feet apart, and and they wore masks. All the residents wore masks, but we had music, we had cookies, we had some games to play. And so we had shifts. For every hour, we'd have a new group of 10 come in. So we did that. We also have one of our employees that's a singer and a pianist. And so she has been entertaining residents, again, the 10 at a time, doing sing-alongs, name that tune. She's even played for church, like a small setting for a church, some hymnals and things like that. So we're doing that. Let's see, just
We have a cart that goes around that we can do individual visits. So we'll have like special puzzles or adult coloring, cards if they want. So different.
And I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
We've also had schools do pen pals with residents, and that's kind of helped them feel engaged as well.
That's awesome. You know what? There's nothing better than that old-fashioned letter that comes in the mail, and I still love that. I just think it's just so special. And I saw on the news, too, that communities are needing playing cards and checkers board games, and their communities are wanting these kind of things to use for their residents to be able to just have coloring books. I've heard coloring books and Sudoku books and crossword puzzle books. So is there anything we can do just as the community that you think your residents would benefit from?
The same thing you mentioned, just the large coloring books, the big, we have some folks that have poor eyesight, so the large playing cards would be good. Let's see. I know some of our caregivers are going to do chalk designs on the sidewalk so people can look outside their windows and see encouraging notes. So some chalk donations.
Oh, that's sweet.
Also, and, just to encourage our staff, they work really hard. They're long hours, and so just maybe pizza for some of our good, hardworking staff, would be a real encouragement to them. So.
Yeah, that's nice. Just some kind of a care package. That is really, really sweet. Okay, this is a question just in private duty. Acappella, we do private duty nurses and nurses' aides. But we're getting a lot of calls from families that have been told that assisted living communities cannot take new residents at this time. So can you guys clarify, say someone is in the hospital, the adult children are not capable or not able, don't have the space, or just can't do any assisting right now. Can you all take residents, and what is, how do you work with the hospitals and rehabs right now?
Well, a couple of things. Right now in April, we're not taking any new residents, but I know, let's just say someone has to go to rehab and they need to come back. They can do that, but we have to have them under a quarantine for 14 days in their room, and just they cannot leave and that kind of thing. And I think we're still looking at May what we're going to be doing for that. Do you have anything to add to that? No.
Yeah, just really lots of precautions, making sure we're taking full measures. Like she said, the quarantine in the room, suggest companions if we would need it. Just really making sure we're looking through. Everybody is an individual, so it kind of depends on what the case would be. But we have a plan for pretty much everything we could think of.
Right. That's great. And I know there are some group homes that are taking respite temporarily, until this is lifted and people can accept new residents. So we'll just keep, keep an open communication on that. So what if a resident needs to see a doctor? Say they're having symptoms of a bladder infection. How do you handle that?
So what we typically do is I would do an assessment, or if they have a home health agency, they would do the assessment. If they determine that a doctor needs to be seen, most of the physicians are doing teledoc or televisits. And so, you really have to you have to weigh the risk versus benefit of them actually going out of the community. So most physicians are opting to treat within the building through teledoc or televisits. So.
And then prescriptions, if they do need a prescription, those can be delivered. I know from most of the pharmacies, which is a lot of the grocery store pharmacies like Tom Thumb, I know they deliver. So, okay, going back to your residents. So I know you all were one of the first communities to have residents dine in their rooms for safety, which was so smart. And I'm so glad you all were ahead of the curve on that. So how are your residents doing with eating in their rooms? Are they doing okay?
Yeah, they seem to be doing okay. We do have a few residents that are maybe choking hazards, and so it's not safe for them to be in the room. So we will allow a few in the dining room so we can observe them. But,
Yeah, that's great. That's great.
And I think with that too, we're still offering a full menu, so we haven't, they still have the choices to choose from and the alternates and stuff. So even though they are being served in their room, they can still order off the menu as they did.
That's nice.
And I also have to say that, for our caregivers here at Appletree they're superior in what they do. And so they just took the bull by the horns with this when it came to communal dining, and it's like a well-oiled machine. They just do it, and it seems to be flowing quite nicely. So I don't think, residents, other than that social interaction that they normally would have during dining, they're not really missing anything.
And also, even though they're eating in the room, they still can come out. They're not confined to their room unless they're under a quarantine type situation. But they can eat in the room, but they can come walk the halls. They can use the laundry room. They can, they can do that. So they're not, in their rooms all the time. They do have some social interaction outside of the room.
Okay, good. So one thing that you all at Appletree benefit from greatly is having RNs. And a lot of the communities have LVNs and medication aids, which I know you all utilize that too. But as RNs, I know you have such a proactive approach. And tell me from a nursing perspective, what you might recommend to other communities, perhaps that may have a couple of COVID positive residents. So what would you, just as nurses with your nurse hats on, how would you encourage them?
So what I would say is definitely infection control, and look at those points of entry into the building, and look at those as your source of where it's coming from, and tighten up the belt the best that you can on making sure that you're minimizing the exposure right there at the door where people come in. And then good hand hygiene, educating your staff in servicing them on PPE and hand washing. That's critical. We started doing that as soon as all this came out. That was my first line, was educating staff on PPE and proper use. And then, of course, hand washing as well.
And we've done the same thing. We've had no COVID clients, and we're doing so much education as nurses on our staff, with our staff, on just how to stay safe, how to prevent infection, and we've had a good outcome too. So my final question. What is the number one selling point? Why is Appletree so successful? So I'll give you each an opportunity to answer that. But what is the number one thing that you love about Appletree that as we serve our seniors?
Well, my number one thing, and our dad lived here, so I know from a family viewpoint how great a place it is. But I think it's the longevity of the staff. We've had people here since day one, almost 21 years ago, and so in order to keep good staff, we treat them well. They're our family, and they love working here. So I think that, and they love the people. You can tell when I meet with them to do their annual review, they love this type of work. So that's my number one selling point, is that we have the longevity of the staff.
And I would definitely agree with that. I think just the energy in the building with the caregivers and how much they love our residents, it really is a family environment here. So it's a blessing to be here.
Yeah, and I would agree 100% on all of that. Just that, the caregivers treat the residents here as though they are family. They treat them like they would want to be treated. And I see that excellence in everything that they do when it's taking care of these residents. And they're like family to them. I think the other, it's not necessarily a selling point, but the other factor I see in this building that sets it apart is that it's a very faith-driven community of people who work here. And I think that is in everything that they say and they do. So.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for your time. We love Appletree. We love working with you all. You all participated in the Pajamas for Seniors drive, and that's been so wonderful to help underprivileged seniors, and we thank you for that and hope you'll participate again this year. But thank you so much. We will get the word out that if there are card games or playing cards, coloring books, we can get them your way for your residents to enjoy. And hopefully this COVID situation will be over soon and we can move back on to a normal routine again. But thank you again for your time, and we wish you the best, and you guys just have a great day. Continue doing what you're doing. Thank you.
And thanks for having us. Thank you.